You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy Im, where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy Im.
Episode 30, Celebrate Change with Sara Khaki. On today's show, we'll meet my friend Sara Khaki, who's the founder and CEO of Atlanta Divorce Law Group and the Khaki Law Firm, which has recently been named one of the fastest growing law firms in the United States. Sara shares her story of her journey as the daughter of Iranian parents and how they flew to Switzerland and then ultimately sought asylum in Sweden as refugees. She shares how her mother's spiritual practice influenced her as a teenager and why in 1996 she and her family immigrated to the United States to create a brand new life. You'll love the wisdom that Sara shares through her Brave Girl story, and as she explains all the lessons that she's learned as she's moved from country to country to country. Sara shares her happily ever after process that she created and what she uses with her clients as part of her law practice, where she believes it's really important to destigmatize divorce. She talks about the guilt and shame that people often experience and how it doesn't have to be that way. She encourages us to celebrate change when we need to bravely transition out of our relationships. Her vision is to make the relationship functional and heal the dysfunction. Her team specializes in holistically helping individuals through the transitions that are associated with divorce. I know you'll love to hear from Sara about her journey as an immigrant and how she had to learn English so that she could succeed in the long term. Her quiet courage is inspiring. So let's meet Sara.
So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Today, I'm very excited to have Sara Khaki from the greater Atlanta area with me on the podcast. And I met Sara a few years ago at a group coaching experience, and we've stayed in touch. And so welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I saw recently that your law firm was named one of the 11 fastest growing firms in the U.S. So tell me a little bit about Khaki Law Firm and then your other company, Atlanta Divorce Law Group.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much for the acknowledgement of that. The Khaki Law Firm is a social security disability law firm that guides people through that disability process. And it was founded in October of 2013 after I had just put my 1-year-old in school and realized that I needed to get back into the legal industry after a hiatus of a year to raise my son. And I had nothing other than a Fujitsu scan snapper and a laptop, and that was my law firm. And I started to just take on clients anywhere I could and network very heavily. And shortly thereafter, took on some part-time staff. And today we now have about 7 people in that firm, and very honored to have been named the 11th fastest growing law firm in the United States. And really, it's an award that I thank my staff for. Some of them have been with me since the late 2013 when we got started, and early 2014, and we all went down to Las Vegas together to receive that award, and I really consider it their award.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, clearly you've built a superstar team, and clearly, they're a very valuable asset, and I know that there's a huge sense of trust among your team because you're a big believer in investing in yourself as well as investing in them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wouldn't feel with integrity if I didn't invest in them and didn't and force them sometimes, push them and challenge them to invest in themselves. Because part of this whole journey for me and my husband, who is not in the day-to-day operations of my firm, does not work in either one of my firms, but he's been a huge source of inspiration for the firms to become what they are, and he's who challenges me, and we very much collaborate together on our businesses. We've invested very heavily in ourselves and really attribute our growth, in our relationship and our family, financially and professionally, and the fact that we invested in coaches along the way. And for our team that we treasure so much and really believe in their abilities, for them to grow along with us and grow with the firm as the firms grow and demands more of us, they need to grow as well. And so that's why we very heavily invest in our team, and actually challenge them to invest in themselves as well. Because it's not always enough for somebody else to invest in you. Part of that journey is for you to invest in yourself and really get some skin in the game.
I totally agree with you. If you're not going to invest in yourself, then who is, right? And you've got to see the value in learning from others and learning from coaches. And so I know part of your backstory also has to do with growing up. You're not from the United States, I don't think, originally. So talk a little bit about your family's journey as immigrants.
Sure. I love sharing this story because I think it's so amazing what my parents have pulled off. I was born in Iran in Middle East, and when I was born, the revolution in Iran had already occurred, but we were still very much at the heels of it. I was born in 83. The revolution in Iran occurred in 79. And for anybody in the audience that may not remember or know, Iran went from a monarchy to a Islamic republic in 1979 when they overthrew the king. And my parents were revolutionaries, very much, 1970 hippies that took to the streets and asked for the monarchy to be taken off, but they were asking for a democracy. And instead, the revolution was more or less hijacked by the Islamic Republic. And when they came into power, they changed the political platform of Iran, and they changed the country. And for my parents, it wasn't for the better. And then by the time I was born, Iran and Iraq went into war with each other. So in around 86, when I was 3 years old, my father decided that it was just they could no longer tolerate living the circumstances of having bombs dropped on us. I mean, we were living in a very beautiful part of Tehran. My parents had a very nice living, all the luxuries that, one would like to have in life. But when bombs are being thrown, down, they basically at middle of night or middle of dinner. I remember at the age of 3, we would have to race down to the bomb shelters and go underground. And so my dad felt like all those luxuries did not mean anything if they didn't really have true freedom, or if my mom couldn't go to her school where she worked as a teacher and wasn't allowed to wear what she wanted to wear and had to cover her hair, and all these things that they were just not used to, being hippie children from the 60s and 70s. So they decided for us to flee the country. And at that time, it was very, very hard to leave the country. So my dad got paid off a smuggler to help us to get passports that didn't belong to us, to create passports for us and get us out. And we left for Switzerland, and we weren't going to live in Switzerland. But the point was, we were supposed to get on a flight to Switzerland and pretend that we're traveling, we're tourists traveling to Switzerland. So we had to sell off everything. We couldn't take anything with us to Switzerland because that wouldn't look like we're tourists. So my dad sold everything we had, all of our possessions, and we went to Switzerland airport. And when we got there, he had to call the smuggler from a pay phone, and the smuggler said, okay, wire me another, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever. Imagine $10,000 in 1986. And when you're not even on the dollar, you're still on the Iranian currency. And I will get you guys to Sweden. So my dad took a leap of faith. He had already burnt all the ships, and he had no choice but to move forward. So he did that, and then we flew into Sweden. And when we were given very strict instructions that when we arrive in Sweden, we're supposed to do everything we can to get taken into custody, to be arrested, because otherwise we will have nowhere to go. If they take us custody, then they'll at least examine us as refugees. So we did that. We arrived, and we kept saying we have no documentation on us, and that's the only way we could get them to take us in for custody. And they did. And we went into a refugee camp in the most northern point of Scandinavia called Kiruna, which is pretty much on the tundra. So my parents, now imagine we've gone from, so imagine my parents had gone from Tehran, like a very exotic land, warm, like what used to be the Paris of Middle East, to the most northern point of Scandinavia with nothing but snow and only 2 hours of sunlight. And they took us in, and it was, I mean, I was at this point 3.5, and I don't remember much, but I have some specific pockets of memory that are incredibly vivid. And I just remember having an amazing time. And this refugee facility took such good care of us. They very immediately would buy me and my brother, like once a week, they would give us like a little allowance to go buy ourselves some toys because we had nothing. And they had kept us there for 6 months, but we really were well taken care of. And after 6 months, they gave us asylum, and we were able to move wherever we wanted in Sweden. So we moved to the most southern, one of the most southern points of Sweden, which is 4 hours south of Stockholm. And it's a very, very small town that did not become a town until like the 1930s or 40s. It was a village before then with like a population of maybe 15,000. And that's where I grew up, and very much a fairy tale kind of little city, biking to school, biking to my practices, you know, whether it was ballet or whatever, having a very safe and comfortable childhood. And I grew up there from the time I was, you know, probably we got there when we were 4 till I was 14, when my mom had just survived terminal cancer. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer when I was 12. And that changed my parents' entire life trajectory and philosophy. My mom got very, very deep into personal development when I was 12, when she was facing that cancer diagnosis, that she was going to die. I remember, you know, every night we would read Louise L. Hay together in bed.
Wow.
Yeah, we would study Rumi, which is the ancient Persian philosopher. We would study Buscaglia, which is an Italian philosopher, and that basically became our foundation. And then miraculously, she survived it with just the power of her mind, and just that's what I believe, you know, that it was really the power of her mind that survived it. But once she did, she was done living a comfortable life. She really wanted to live bigger, and decided that we should move to the United States to be closer to our family here, and just really wanted her and my dad to invest whatever savings they had in a business in the United States, because that was harder to do in Sweden, being much more socialist back in the time when I lived there. And they just, I think they just were tired of the day-to-day routine and needed to change their lives after what we had just gone through as a family.
Right.
So in 96, we moved to United States, and my parents were able to move here. Again, they told me and my brother that we were just coming for vacation, and they really intended just to come for vacation. It was the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, and we came here to visit family. We just brought with us what we're going to have for the summer. And then all of a sudden, my family told my aunt and uncles told my dad and my mom, "You guys should just stay here. You know, you've gone through so much back. You know, you don't want to go back to the house where you fought your cancer. Just stay here and have a new life, you know, and experience something new." And I think that was just very attractive to my parents. So they came to my brother and I, and they said, "What do you guys think?" And I was very much for it. I was very enamored by United States. I just loved everything about it. And my brother at the time was 17, and he was, you know, in high school. And he's like, "Absolutely not. You know, I want to go back to my school in Sweden, blah, blah, blah." And unfortunately, he lost that battle, and we stayed. And my dad got an investor's visa, and we stayed, and we've been here ever since. But yeah, 2 times my parents have moved my brother and I from one continent to another with basically absolutely nothing, and burning all the ships.
Wow. That is a fantastic story. I never knew that about you. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, I think it's an important story to share. The bravery really came from my parents, but I think that it really shows that we all have the power to do that, to make those kind of big changes in our lives for something that we feel is calling on us. And we may not always know why, but I think we really go, first of all, the first time when they moved out of Iran, it was really just a matter of no longer tolerating the dysfunction that they were in, that dysfunction of raising your children under bomb shelters or not having the freedom to express yourself. And a lot of people did tolerate that. And I really love my dad so much for standing up and saying, I no longer tolerate this. And as I understand I have to give up all these luxuries and comforts in my life, but that's no price to pay compared to what I believe could be out there for me and my family. And Sweden was exactly what he wanted it to be. It was an amazing education system, complete full power of full expression as an individual, and the safety from bombs and war. So it was and very much peaceful. And then I think when my brother and I were mature enough to understand that it was stagnation for my parents to grow up there, and it was going to be stagnation for me and my brother to grow up there. They made the next move, which was to the United States. And because what we fell in love with the United States is that there is just absolutely no stagnation here. Not if you want to really take in the full promise of what this country has to offer. You can't be stagnant, and you have to consistently grow and get uncomfortable. And I'm just so proud of my parents for having seen that and having seen the stagnation being a cause of potentially my mother's cancer and illness, where she really just needed consistent excitement and growth in her life. She had spent over the past decade in the 90s with the same daily routine that no longer was really feeding her soul.
Right. Well, and I think you're very fortunate that you had the parents that you did, and they modeled so many things for you that you're able to now model for your children as well. As you went to Georgia State and got your degree, then you went to University of Georgia Law School, and then you're like, I'm going to go out there and be a female entrepreneur, CEO, founder of not one firm but two firms. So talk a little bit about the work that you do in Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and kind of how that came about, and how you've positioned yourself in the marketplace different than other firms that may handle things like child custody, paternity, pre and post nups, divorce, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And thank you, Tracy, for that wonderful intro to Atlanta Divorce Law Group. Atlanta Divorce Law Group has trademarked with the U.S. Patent Office happily ever after divorce. And the whole concept of Atlanta Divorce Law Group comes from, really as an honor to my parents' journey and my journey as a child, which is not being afraid of change and leaving behind a state of dysfunction, as comfortable as that has become for you, as attached as you have become to the day-to-day routine. Even though there's dysfunction in it, as human beings, our subconscious is attracted to that. And leaving that behind and facing the unknown, as scary as that can be, knowing that change in your life is necessary, because that's what you need to do to get to your happy and healthier place. And happily ever after divorce does the concept of it does two things. It pokes fun at the whole concept of happily ever after that we're fed. Since we're children, that you get married once and you do it right, and then you ride off into the sunset. And that anything after that, if you decide to get divorced, if it's not working out, we take some level of guilt and shame in that. And happily ever after divorce really is meant to get rid of that stigma of divorce and poke fun of the whole concept of happily ever after, and make you realize that there actually could be happily ever after with divorce, something that in our society we stigmatize as painful, as harmful, as hurtful. What if we didn't? What if we saw it as a celebration of change? And I really feel if people came together without any guilt or shame and said, I'm no longer functioning in this marriage, or this marriage is no longer working for us, and they did that with love and honesty with each other, we may actually have a lot more divorces out there that are less harmful and painful, because people are coming to each other from a place of honesty. And when the stigma of divorce is taken out and the society is not putting that on us, then we can really look forward to our future, with a more positive outlook than feeling so much guilt and shame around it. Because I really do believe that a lot of the pain that, spouses put on each other when they're going through divorce is imposed from what they're feeling from their community, from their family, from their religious centers or whatever. So if we were to change the whole way we look at it, I really believe that two people that are going through the process would also treat each other better. And really, think about it, Tracy, when a person is unhealthy and overweight and they go to the doctor and the doctor tells them, you need to lose some weight, you need to make some lifestyle changes. What the current way you're living is no longer healthy for you. And that person goes and changes their diet and they change their environment and they change their daily routine. We celebrate them for, wow, look at you for taking charge of your life and taking responsibility and making this big change in your life. Right. But when an individual comes and says, I'm in a very unhappy and dysfunctional and unhealthy marriage that is no longer working for me or my family, why don't we celebrate that person for deciding to change up their routine, their environment, and their habits, and the people that are in or around them? When that decision has been made, well thought out, and they've done everything they can, and it's no longer working. And that's really what our firm is on a mission of, Atlanta Divorce Law Group, is to change that conversation of divorce, change the way people divorce, and change that stigma of divorce, to get rid of the guilt and shame and celebrate people when they are so bravely make that big life transition in their life, which my parents did. And they were celebrated. So why shouldn't somebody else be celebrated when they're doing it in the realm of their family? Because they're still going to be family if they have young children.
Correct. Mom
and dad are always going to be mom and dad. And why don't we take it from a dysfunctional structure and make it a more functional family? And in our vision of Atlanta Divorce Law Group is, mom and dad are going to be able to go to your birthdays together. They're going to be able to go to your graduation together. They're going to be able to enter the church and exit the church at the same time when you get married. And hopefully one day grandparent together. So they always will be family. Let's just move it from dysfunctional to functional. And I think that that's what sets us apart from a lot of the other firms in the Atlanta area, is that we don't really see ourselves as a producer of a legal document that says you are now divorced. We see ourselves as a guide as you're going through this huge life transition. And we really look at that transition as we need to approach it from a holistic approach. And it's not just the legal piece that you're looking for. You're looking for this financial security. You're looking for who is going to take care of my children now that I'm a single mom. How am I going to get to work? If I've never worked before, where should I go to work? Or, a single dad that is going to be alone with their children for the first time on a weekend, that's never had the children by themselves. What does that look like for them? How can we help them with that? So we really look at it as helping people through this big process that they're going through from a holistic approach that we want to curate and choreograph for you to make it as positive as possible, rather than, when we come down the court steps, here's your divorce decree, congratulations, you're done. And we don't see ourselves solely the producer of that. We see ourselves as a vehicle for change.
That's great. That's really amazing. So you're really looking at the whole client experience and what they're emotionally going through, as well as kind of maybe legally or financially, and connecting them with the right resources. So that's definitely different than what most people would think of when they think of, oh, I've got to get a divorce lawyer. So that's fantastic that you've taken this different approach. And I agree with you. I think that there is a huge stigma with guilt and shame. And I agree with you. It's not typically celebrated as a change.
Right.
But hats off to you for really kind of coming at it from a different angle. And I think back to the things that you and your mom were doing when she was, going through her cancer and the feeding into your mind with Louise Hay and Rumi and all of those types of philosophers, and how you've brought that forward into your practice, which is so different than what I'm at least familiar with when I think about attorneys, divorce attorneys, custody attorneys, and things like that. So that's really good, Sarah. I love that.
Thank you so much.
What's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today?
This question, and I love that you've asked it of me. Nobody's ever asked me this question before. So when you told me before our podcast that you were going to ask me this, it really had me thinking. And what I came up with is this. There's a lot, obviously that happened from the time I was born, and leaving Iran and going to Sweden and all of that I witnessed a lot of bravery from my parents, other people that were on that same journey as us, and just, heroes of your childhood.
Right.
And I think all of that built a lot of courage within me. But I think the moment that it really just sparked was when I was in 7th grade. We had just moved to we had just come to the United States to spend our summer here in July. And after being here for a month, school was about to start, and my parents made the last minute decision that we weren't going to go back and we would stay in the United States. And they, on a Friday, enrolled me into a public school, 7th grade in the United States public school here. And on Monday, I was going to start that school. And I don't know if it completely processed for me that I'm about to start school in a completely foreign country that I don't really speak the language. I mean, we took a little bit of English in Sweden, but not much. Maybe once a week, like a 30-minute class. I knew a little bit just from, TV and American culture, but that was it. And to this day, I don't fully understand how this quiet courage that just came over me that day when my mom and my uncle dropped me off at the footsteps of the school and kissed me goodbye and wished me luck. And it's not like my mom's English was any better than mine. She couldn't really help me in any way. And she had to go off and figure out what they were going to do with their immigration status. So I remember just walking in there, and I don't understand how I didn't scream or cry for help from them and tell them I'm not getting out of the car. I'm not doing this. I'm still not understanding how a 13 and a half-year-old had the quiet courage to just step in and face a completely brand new school system. I looked incredibly awkward because back then there was no Facebook or globalization where everybody in the world looks the same. Nowadays, you go to Shanghai, you go to New York, you go to Tehran, or you go to Stockholm, everybody dresses the same because of globalization. But back then I looked like a very awkward European kid that didn't look like I had shopped in any American designer stores. So I looked like a foreigner, and I had a very strong Swedish accent. And if I ever even opened up my mouth to speak any English words that I didn't know very many of. But once I got in there, I remember the clerk at the front desk took me to the classroom, the homeroom that I was going to be in. And I didn't even know what a homeroom is, right? The system was so different. I can't even tell you. And I remember just facing the teacher, and I didn't know the word for schedule. So I was trying to find how to tell her I need a schedule. So I would use my hands to try to explain to her. And everybody was just dead quiet, just staring at me. And I just went and sat down. I didn't cry. I didn't get up. I was just complete, everything inside of me just went quiet and just focused on what I needed to face and what I needed to do. But that was very awkward first month until everybody kind of got used to me and I got used to them. And any moment I was called on in the classroom, it was an opportunity for an epic embarrassment. I wouldn't be able to even really fully count for you beyond 100 in English. So when we were in math class, it was just, if I could solve the problems, but I couldn't tell you if you called on me. But I remember my uncle helped me with this because I knew that there was something in America for children who do not speak English, and it was called ESOL, English as a Second Language. And I just knew that that wasn't going to be me. I wasn't going to do that. I didn't want to be separated from the other students. I had grown up in Sweden, incredibly social, very much, very popular, had a lot of friends, very much just, the center of things. And I just did not want to be isolated with other immigrant children and not fully experience assimilating into the culture. I really wanted to assimilate. And and that's not what for every immigrant, but that was what I wanted. And so I remember telling the teacher, please, 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 with my uncle's help, give me a month and don't put me in ESOL. Evaluate me again in a month. And I worked my butt off every weekend, every night. My uncle, who was in the United States at the time, would be up with me till really late, Uncle Mo, and we would just work on it. So I would go above and beyond everybody else in the class, because I didn't want them to find a reason to put me in ESOL. And a month went by, and they pulled me out to talk to me, and then they said, "You know what? You've proven that you can stay in here with the rest of the class." But I really feel like, to this day, whenever I'm about to do something really scary or face something scary or step into a situation that, just gets my heart racing, I think back, I'm like, man, like you did that, that quiet courage that you just found within you, and you just faced it and you did it. And how scary that must be for like a 7th grader. And to this day, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that now, but, and I think that was a big turning point for me. And obviously there's been a lot of other brave moments, like we talked earlier about investing in yourself, and that initial investment in my first coach, which was my law firm coach, how to manage a small law firm. That scared me. But I think that bravery came from an earlier bravery that built up my courage. And when you and I met at David Nagel's program, and I signed up for his program, that was incredibly terrifying for my husband and I. But each of those moments, Tracy, I think for me, what I find is that a quietness comes over me, because I'm a very outspoken and expressed person. But in those moments, I go very quiet. I get very calm, and then I just watch myself from outside doing it. And that's very much what I experienced in that first day of 7th grade moment, and all the other moments in my life, like, starting a second law firm or having babies, delivering babies. I just go into this quietness, and I go into myself, and I have like an outer body experience where I watch my body go through the motions and act.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us don't allow ourselves to get still and to go inward like that. And so stay stuck in the fear, doubt, and worry. So, I mean, that's amazing. You were, in 7th grade going through that, but that's amazing. And look at where you are today. I mean, I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that, you don't have to have left different countries or continents that have had moments like that as a teenager. I think if we look back, we all have had moments, because as a teenager, some things just feel so big, right? And I think we've all had those moments as teenagers or in our developmental years where we kind of expressed that, we played with that muscle of courage, because it is a muscle that you can grow and exercise. And then just kind of later on in life, you look back and you're like, well, that, good for me. I mean, I don't know if I was back in 7th grade, if I'd be able to handle it like that. Yeah. Because we all have those moments of having to face everybody really seeing us and being very vulnerable.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to be on the show. I know that your story will inspire others, and I really appreciate you. And I'm so glad that we got to know each other so many years ago and continue our friendship. So thanks again, Sara, and I wish you the best of luck with both of your law firms.
Tracy, thank you so much. Like I told you, your energy and your warmth is just so inspirational, and I love being around it, whether I get to watch it from afar and watch your growth from afar, or get to be with you in seminars. We're just fortunate as women entrepreneurs to have women like you that are putting us up and celebrating us, and wanting to support other women like you do. And thank you so much for this podcast. I really, really admire what you're doing here. And thank you for having me on it.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.